Hello good people, and welcome back to another math video. This time we're going to be talking about converting between decimals and fractions. Let's get started. Okay, so first up, if we're going to convert a decimal to a fraction. So the easiest way to do this is if we have, let's say, a very common decimal, like right here, 5/10, is just to listen very carefully to what you are saying when you actually read this fraction correctly. Now that's the key, you got to read them correctly, you can't say 0.5. But if you say 5/10, well, let's think about that. Here it is written out, 5/10. Then you could actually write what you're saying as a fraction. I said 5/10, and here's me writing 5/10 as a fraction. Let's see, here's another one. This is 45 hundredths. So if I write that, I could just write what I'm saying, 45 1/100ths. So those are both correct. Now they're not in lowest terms. We could reduce each of these. 5/10 could get reduced down to 1/2, and 45 hundredths could get reduced down to 9/20ths. But those are still correct. And so the easiest way to write a decimal as a fraction is to just say the decimal correctly. In this case we said 5/10, in this case we said 45 hundredths, and then actually write down what you said. 5/10, 45 hundredths, and then you might have to reduce your fractions. Here's a couple more examples. So this first one, this is 3/10. So that's me saying it, and then here's me writing 3/10. This next one is 55 hundredths. So I'm actually going to write 55 1/100ths. This next one is 24 hundredths. So I'm going to write 24 over 100. Now these last two, 24 over 100 and 55 over 100, could both be reduced to a fraction in lowest terms, but that is mathematically correct. Okay, so now we get to a couple here where we have a number left of the decimal point. So this is 1 and 25 hundredths. So that means we have one whole. Well, when we convert this to a fraction, we're still going to have one whole. So this is 1 and 25 1/100ths. And again, that fraction could be reduced. Okay, the next one I have 2 and 1/100th. I'll have that whole number 2 in my fraction, and 1/100th. And the last one, 3 and 46 hundredths. That 3 will remain, 3 wholes, 46 1/100ths. And again, that would reduce as well. Now if we're going to go in the other direction, and we're going to start with a fraction and convert that to a decimal, there are, I would say, 3 common ways to do this. Number one would just be to know them. Now I don't mean that you would have to know every fraction to decimal conversion, but there's some that are really, really common. Like 1/2. You just should really know that that is equal to 5/10. The next one is to say them. There are some fractions that will work out well when you just say them to convert to a decimal. And number 3 is to divide them. You can always divide a fraction out to get to the decimal. We'll look at each of these ways in depth now. So when I said to know them, these are some common ones that really it's good practice just to know these by heart. That 1/2 is equal to 5/10. Because that's just so common. You see this all the time. So it's just really helpful if you just know that one. Same thing here with our fourths. We have 1/4, 2/4, and 3/4. It's just really helpful to know that 1/4 is 25 hundredths. 2/4, hopefully you know that that's equal to 1/2. So that's going to equal 5/10. And 3/4 is equal to 75 hundredths. So those are some others that would just be good to know. The fifths right here, like 1/5, 2/5, each of these, each fifth is worth 2/10. So 1/5 is 2/10. 2/5 would be another 2/10, which would bring us up to 4/10. and then so on. We're kind of counting by twos here when we have the fifths. The next option was to be able to say them. Now this doesn't work a lot, but it does work if you have a fraction that is in tenths or a fraction that is in 1/100ths. For example, if I had 4/10 as my fraction, listen to the words that I'm saying. 4/10. So I can write that as a decimal. Here is that as a decimal. 4/10. And you're done. That's it. The other example, let's see, would be out of 100. If I had 37 over 100, that is 37 1/100ths, and I could just write 37 100ths. So again, this is great, but it only works if you have tenths or 1/100ths. Okay, and the last method is to divide them. This always works, so that is great, but it's also the most effort, so that's not great. But you can use a calculator to do these, but if you were going to do the long division, we have to know something. We have a little joke that we always say that the top dog is in the house. So that's this part of the fraction. The numerator is the top number, and that is always going to go in the house. And by the house, I mean like the division house. So here it is. So 3, remember that's our top number right here, into the house, and 8 on the outside. And now I'm going to divide. And if you know your long division, 8 doesn't go into 3, but we can add a decimal point here, put a 0 in, and 8 would go into 30, but it's going to go in 3 times. 3 times 8 is 24. I can subtract 6, add another 0, bring that down. 8 into 60 would go 7 times, which would get us 56, and we'd subtract and get 4, bring down another 0. 8 would go into 45 times, and that's going to go in evenly, so we're done. And then there's your decimal. So 3/8 is equal to 375 thousandths. Here's 5/6, same thing. The 5 is our top number, so that is going to go inside the division house. So here it is in the division house, getting divided by the 6. 6 does not go into 5, so put our decimal point, add the 0. 6 does go into 50. 8 times 6 is 48. And I can subtract and get 2, bring down a 0. 26 would go into 23 times, which would be 18. I can subtract and get 2. I can bring down another 0. And maybe you're seeing that this is just going to go on and on forever. How do I know that already? Well, I already had 20. And then I multiplied, got 18, subtracted, got 2, which gives me 20 again. So I'm going to be in this little loop right here. So this is what we call a repeating decimal. So 83 hundredths would be us kind of rounding, because really this 3 is going to go on forever and ever. So we might say our final answer would be 83 hundredths, and we put that little bar over the 3 because we know it's repeating. Okay, so that's the divide them. I know it's a little bit more work, but this works with every single fraction. You put that top number into the house, divide by the bottom number, use your calculator if the long division is tough for you, and then you'll have your answer. Okay, so again, when we're going fraction to decimal, okay, some of them we're just going to know, which is great. Some of them we might be able to say them if they're tenths or hundredths, and then you can always divide. Whoop, if I spelled divide correctly. You can always divide. All right, well that's it. Short little video on going from decimals to fractions or fractions to decimals. Hope that helps. Have a great day.